Hi there, my name is Miss Townsend and I love math. Welcome to Math with Townsend. In this video, I take up the practice package of EQAO review material for the academic grade 9 students. This is video number 1. So we start with question 1. Which of the following has a volume that can be represented by s cubed? And so s cubed also means s to the exponent 3. So the first thing is this is a volume statement. We know that volume only applies to three-dimensional objects, so there's no way it can apply to this flat triangle, and there's no way volume could apply to this flat square. So for sure, you cross off A and you cross off C. Now, the other two objects are both three-dimensional, so they could conceivably have volume. This is a triangular prism. No, it's a triangular pyramid. And we don't really necessarily know what this formula is, but we can make a guess that maybe it's something like the formula for the triangular prism, which is this, and then maybe that cut in thirds, the way that everything else is cut in thirds. Either way, there's definitely a fraction involved, and I don't see a fraction up here. Now D, well, I've got a cube, and I know it's a cube because the length, width, and height are all marked as the same. Therefore, the volume would be length times width. Oops. The pen doesn't like when I write curves sometimes. Length times width times height is s times s times s, also known as s exponent 3. And by the way, there's a reason why we say this means s cubed, and that's because it's based on what happens when you have a cube. So s cubed is obviously a cube. Therefore, the answer is D. Hopefully you got that much faster than I did. Question 2. What value of m makes the equation 6a exponent m divided by 2a exponent 3 equal to 3a exponent 5 true? Well, what do you remember about exponent laws? Let's review. So first of all, what I have is I have a monomial in the numerator and a monomial in the denominator. So we have coefficient, variable, and exponent. Coefficient, variable, exponent. So how do you divide monomials? Well, you divide the coefficient by the coefficient. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Then you divide the variables that match. And when you divide variables, you subtract their exponents. So this would be a to the m subtract 3. Now what I really want is this, 3a to the 5. So therefore this has to equal 5. So m minus 3 has to equal 5, and therefore m has to equal 8. So again, hopefully you knew and you remembered that the exponent laws tell us that subtracting the exponents is what you do in a division question. And so you knew right away that the answer was 8 because 8 minus 3 is 5. So what is the value of this expression? So this is obviously just an integers bed-miss question. So keep in mind that not only do you have to remember, obviously, the order of bed-miss, but also remember that when we're talking about a fraction, that there are invisible brackets in the numerator and invisible brackets in the denominator. In other words, you clean up, do all the good integer math in the numerator, then you do all the good integer math in the denominator, only then do you deal with the divide sign. So let's look at what we have. So the first thing is that in the numerator, I have a bracket. And inside that bracket, there's math. Negative 18 plus 12 is negative 6. So now in the numerator, all I have to do is a multiplication statement. 5 times negative 6 is negative 30. And now on the bottom of the fraction, negative 4 plus 3, no, negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. Now finally, all I have is a number divided by a number. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. 30 divided by 3 is 10. So the answer is 10, which is A. Luke designs a garden in the shape of a right triangle as shown below. The area of the garden is 96 meters squared. What's the value of x? So area, we know that the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. And we know that the base and the height are the two sides that meet at a 90-degree angle. So therefore, base and height are x and 3x. So I can sub those in for base and height. Now, what else do I know? Well, I know the area. I know that the area is 96, so I can sub that in for the area. So area is 96, base and height right here. So now all I have left is an equation, and hopefully I'll be able to solve for x. So first of all, look at this numerator. That numerator says x times 3x. So let's do that math. X times 3x is 3x squared. And now again, I'm isolating or solving for x. So the first thing I always do is get rid of division. And the math to get rid of division is to do multiplication. So on both sides, I'm going to multiply by 2. So on the left, when I multiply by 2, 96 times 2 is 192. On the right, when I multiply that by 2, this 2 just simply cancels this 2. So I'm left with 3x squared. So now, again, I'm isolating for x. So on both sides of the equation, I'm going to divide by 3. So on the left, oh, ignore this. This didn't happen. Nobody sees this. Nobody sees this. There's nothing here. Anyway, I didn't see anything. 192 divided by 3 is 64. On the right, 3 and 3 cancel. So I'm left with x squared. So now I have x squared, but I want x. So to undo exponent 2, you do square root. So the opposite of square is square root. So square root 64 is 8, and here I'm left with x. So what is the value of x? It must be 8 meters. A square and an equilateral triangle are pictured below. If the square and the triangle have the same perimeter, what is the value of x? So let's talk about the perimeter of a square. We know that a square has 4 sides that are the same length. So if this side is 5x plus 3, then so is this, so is this, and so is this. All the sides are 5x plus 3, so we can say that the perimeter of the square is equal to 4 times 5x plus 3, because there's 4 sides, and they're all the same length. So an equilateral triangle is a triangle where all sides are the same length. So if this is 7x minus 1, this is 7x minus 1, and so is this. So we can say that the perimeter of the triangle is 3 times 7x minus 1, because there's 3 sides, all of which are 7x minus 1 units. Now we're told that the perimeters are the same. So in other words, we are told that the perimeter of the square is identical to the perimeter of the triangle. Therefore, this, the perimeter of the square, must be equal to the perimeter of the triangle, which is this. And what I've given myself here is one equation where I can try to solve for x. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing is to do polynomial math on the left and right. So for example, on the left, I have 4 times a bracket. So how do you do that? Well, that means multiply 4 times 5x and 4 times 3, and then there's a closed bracket, so stop multiplying by 4. So that would give me 20x. 4 times 5x is 20x. Then 4 times 3 is positive 12. Same idea over here. Now I'm multiplying by 3. So 3 times this term and 3 times this term. 3 times 7 is 21, so this would be 21x. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. So now that I have just a unsimplifiable binomial and an unsimplifiable binomial, now I can start to move things around. For example, I'm going to subtract 21x from both sides. So when I do that, I'll be eliminating 21x from the right. So on the right, when I eliminate 21x, all that happens is this and this cancel each other out. You're left with just negative 3. On the left, 20x subtract 21x is negative x. So now I'm going to try to keep isolating this x term. I'm going to subtract 12 on both sides. So here, this cancels with this. I'm left with negative x. Negative 3, take away 12 is negative 15. So I'm left with negative x equals negative 15. So let's get rid of those negative signs. Divide by negative 1, and I get x equals 15. Boom. A ball is dropped from a height of 10 meters above the ground. It bounces 90% of its previous height on each bounce. What is the approximate height that the ball bounces on the fourth bounce? So we're going to start up here at 10 meters. It's going to hit the ground and bounce to 90% of 10 meters. So how high is that? Well, 90% of 10 meters looks like this, and so that's 9 meters. So this is now 9 meters. Now we're going to bounce again. And now we're going to go to 90% of 9 meters. So here's what that math looks like. 90% of 9 meters, and that gives us 8.1 meters. And now we're going to bounce again. And now we're going to 90% of 8.1 meters. And 90%, oops, got ahead of myself a little. So 90% of 8.1 meters is 7.29. And one more bounce. So now, boom, I want 90% of 72.9. So I'm going to do 0.9 times 7.29, and that gives me, oops, that gives me 6.561 meters, and that rounds to 6.6 meters. There we go. Oops, 7 point, you knew that. Okay, next question. Deacon has a candy making business. The graph below shows the total number of candies his business has produced by the end of the first 4 days. So it clearly looks like a linear relationship. If this trend continues, which of the following points represents a day with more candies produced than expected? So both the word trend, oops, both the word trend and the word expected suggest that we're looking for a pattern in our scatter plot. And a pattern means make a line of best fit. So I would say that that is a pretty decent line of best fit. And again, what that does is it shows us the trend. So the 0.5500 is right here, and that's perfectly fitting with the trend. So it's not more candies, it's the exact number of candies. What about the 0.9 and 850? Well, the 0.9 and 850 is right about here, which is either on the line or below it, so definitely not more candies. The 0.10 and 1300, oh, here's the 0.10, 1300. That's not on the line, it's above the line. And if it's above the line, it means I made too many candies. So that's probably my answer, but let's double check by looking at the last point, 14,400. 1400 is right nicely on the line. So obviously this point here does not fit the trend. The other 3 points fit the trend. This one says you made too many candies. I didn't expect that, and it doesn't fit the trend. So that's the first 7 questions. I know we have a lot more to do, so I hope you'll continue watching the videos and taking up these solutions.